Heather, I'm so glad that you are here and joining me in this conversation. Today is a full moon. So, Heather, as you know, Unlearn the Crap is about the condition responses and automatic programming that gets in our way, that creates dysfunction, disempowerment, that takes us off course, that creates disease and stress and this is really disconcerting, this repeat back, but and takes us off our game. Yeah. And it's also the crap that takes us off center. So, what crap did you need to unlearn so that you could level up?
Oh my goodness, so much crap, quite honestly. And it is so interesting. I feel like it's been layers of crap. And now at age 50, I really uncovered and been more open about some of the crap. Because I will tell you, from the time that I was a little girl, I thought that I was so ugly and no one would want me and just not worthy of anything for so many years. And it was very interesting how I could present myself as someone that had all of my stuff together. Like I looked very presentable, the career, the family, everything was together. But underneath, I was a mess. And I was always trying to prove myself to others and to myself and trying to overgive to others so that I could feel good about myself. And what I've learned over the last few years is that you don't, with trauma, you don't just move away from it and move on with your life. And I realized that that's what I did. I moved away from it. I lived my life. I did the things that I wanted to do as an adult, but I never dealt with the childhood stuff that was still holding me back up until a couple of years ago. So I really had to run full force into acknowledging that what happened to me as a child still was impacting me as an adult and had manifested through my life through different symptoms, right? And I had autoimmune thyroid. And even though I had already reversed my autoimmune thyroid to a point, symptoms started to come back when I realized I hadn't dealt with the crap that was underneath. And so it was a lot. It was a lot of crap. And for a long time, I told myself, was it really that bad? Really, was it really that bad? Do you really have to keep going back to this, back to this, back to this? And when I was doing the recent writing, and I wrote a lot of things out in the first draft that did not get published, but I was writing it all out. I said to myself, if any one of these things would have happened to one of your granddaughters, would it be okay? And of course, the answer was no. It would not be okay. And that's when I realized how bad what I went through as a child and teenage years until I moved out of my house, how bad it really was.
Yeah. We in a way to keep ourselves safe and not falling apart is we normalize and we minimize and we suppress. So I want to go back to one of the things that you said, which was in your writing. You just written your memoir book, have you not? Could you tell us about it?
Yes. So it's a piece of my memoir. And I realized how much stuff I actually do have to talk about. So this small piece of it, I made a promise to my aunt when I was 18 years old that I would never let my grandparents know what happened to me through childhood.
Oh,
I did. And at the time, it made sense. I didn't want to hurt them. So I moved away from them. I moved away from everybody. And I didn't give an explanation of why I left. I just left. And so I ran away. Well, when it was coming time to where I knew my story had to come out because I needed to help people at a deeper level because I was going through the motions. Right after I decided to write this, my grandma fell and hit her head and the very day that I sat down to write the very first draft, she died that day. And it was just all of this emotion poured out in me. It, and it was like, it was just, there were, gave myself the chills even saying that because I had been keeping this secret for so long. And then all of a sudden, I was going to put it on paper, right? I was going to put it on paper and it was going to get published, and this was coming out, but I didn't have to hold on to this secret any longer because she wasn't here to read it. So it was,
Do you think her passing was her way of releasing you from your promise?
I do. I do. She and I were very energetically connected as she took care of me when I was a tiny baby. And, I didn't want to hurt them. And I know that if I would have told them what was going on, that they would have intervened. But there was a lot of fear of what could happen to me or to others if I were to tell what was going on in that house. And a month before my grandma died, my oldest son died unexpectedly. And the moment that he died, the first thing I said to myself is, my grandma knows how I feel. What she wrote to me in a card, she said the exact same thing. I know exactly how you feel. I lost your uncle when he was 29 years old. Trust God and he will get you through. And I was like, okay, this is the path. This is the way that I'm going to. The day that I took some of my son's ashes to a mindset retreat that I was already planning on going to. And I just felt that I needed to go because I needed to get some of the grief processing. And I put some of his ashes at a volcano is the day that she fell and hit her head. And
I
I
have
don't think
goosebumps.
that's and I don't think that's coincidental. I think the pain that she was feeling from what I was feeling with that, it was a lot, but it was all into this unraveling of, my story has to be told so that I can help others, so that I can fulfill my purpose more deeply of why I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. You gave me the gift of being a free reader of my book, my memoir. And I said to you when you reached out to me afterward that you were one of those girls that intimidated me. You were you were the pretty one, you were the cool one, you were the one that I always felt that I didn't belong in that group. And when you read my story and realized that I'd been traumatized by Mean Girls and where this whole thing came from, you reached out to me and you shared with me some of your traumas. And that was such a beautiful bonding moment for me because I realized that that crap that I was carrying is the same crap that you're carrying. And it's probably the same crap that we're all carrying. And it's this stuff that gets in the way that has us feel each other heart to heart.
You know, and I've had this conversation with a few other people. I feel like I'm in this like balance between energies, right? Is that I'm very bonded to people through energetic ways that can't really be explained. Things where I even for years I might know somebody for years and not really know them truly and deeply. And I can tell you that a lot of people through the course of my life had no idea what I had gone through because I didn't tell them. I didn't want people to know. I wanted people to think I had it all together. But it's the vulnerable moments like this that actually bond people differently, right? Because you never know what someone's gone through until you sit down and have a conversation or until they start reading things, right? It's just outward appearances. You never really know who someone is.
Yeah. And that was what made me sick was the mask, the pretending that everything was okay, while inside I was rotting, I was falling apart. What was it like for you?
You know, sometimes I wish I had two paths to live. One, the direction I did nothing with the healing, and one where I'm at. Because having autoimmunity, and I was diagnosed probably at 13 or 14 years old with autoimmune thyroid, and I was basically told there's nothing I could do about it. And it was just mounting. There were so many symptoms. I had all this fatigue and just digestive issues, and I felt so heavy and burdened. Although it didn't stop me from getting out of bed in the morning because I grew up, you just get up and you don't miss school, you cannot be sick, you must show up. And so I did. I showed up every single day to work. It didn't matter what was going on. But I felt this burden, like this real heaviness within me because I was trying to feel better, but I couldn't figure it out. And so it just manifested into so many different things. I had an eating disorder by the time I was 15 years old, where I would restrict and then binge. And I carried that with me through my 40s, probably 45. Even though it wasn't its hold on me, I still had it. It still had a hold on me. And they still to this day, every once in a while, when I sat down and I read or wrote that first draft, I found myself in the pantry wanting to eat my emotions and I wasn't hungry. I was like, oh wow, this is still ingrained in you. And so it was so interesting. The most of the burden is burden that I put on myself because I never dealt with all the other crap. So everything that I stuffed down emotionally, anything that happened new in my life, I would still stuff it down. Even with my patients and clients, they would tell me such horrible things that would happen to them, and I would just stuff it down for them and I would keep going. But it came to a point where I couldn't stuff it down anymore. And I had to actually look at, okay, you stuffed it down long enough. It's time to stop stuffing. Well, I didn't make the decision. Someone made the decision. God made the decision for me that it was time to stop because it just kept mounting and more and more problems. And I'll tell you, after my grandfather died and I had to interact with my parents again during that, that's when everything came to fruition of I have to do something. Like I was being pushed and pushed and pushed into actually addressing the root problem that was going on. And I didn't have a choice because I was not going to get better if I did not address it.
Yeah. How comfortable are you in sharing with the audience what you're referring to so that they have some sense of understanding what a pivotal moment this was for you?
So with the death, so my grandfather, my mom's dad, he was 94, almost 94 when he died. But I ran away from him. Like he was the most sweetest, gentlest, kindest soul. Like he is the one that, if you want to talk about integrity, that was him. And when he died, it was almost all of these emotions came flooding back because I ran away. And I hurt my grandparents without trying to hurt them because I just moved away. I ran away and I didn't come back. uh, Trying to save them, but knowing that I hurt them. And so being at his funeral and having to be around my parents, and um, my parents are almost comical on how they interact with each other, but they're they actually blamed my grandma for causing my grandfather's death. And
Didn't you say that she passed first?
he passed first. He passed 2 years ago, and my grandma just passed this past October. So he passed first. But it was because she asked him to vacuum the floor, and he fell down and hurt his shoulder. But then he had a heart attack, and it was just no one caused his death. He died of a heart attack or a stroke. That's what caused his death. But my parents were blaming my grandma because they thought there was piles of money hidden in the house. And they weren't one of these piles of money that were hidden in the house. and they thought I was after the money. And so their interactions with me are just telling me that my grandma killed my grandfather and they thought that I was only there for the money. It just, all of these emotions came flooding up and I didn't know how to handle them because I realized there was a lot of guilt from just leaving and not being there for so many years.
How did you deal with that guilt?
I got angry. I got angry with them. First, we were at a breakfast, and I choose not to interact with my parents, but I was in Pennsylvania. I live in Texas, but I was in Pennsylvania, and when my parents dropped me off from that breakfast, I never intended to ever see them ever again. That was my goodbye to them forever because I just didn't want to deal with those emotions. When I got home, interesting enough, I had been invited to go to this 3-day event called the Powerful Living Experience. And I had committed to going because it said, change your mindset, grow your business. That was what I was intending to do. And I did not want to go. I did not want to go. I thought I was going to be bored, wasting my time. Why in the world am I going here? I was really resistant. And I even told the person in front of me, I was like, this is boring. I'm leaving. There's no way I'm going to spend 3 days here with all of this. But it was exactly where I needed to be. And it was actually sitting down and working on some of these old beliefs that I thought about myself and working through some of these emotions and doing some visualizations and turning to my parents in the visualizations and basically thanking them for all the things that they did to me to create who I am as an adult. And going through these particular emotions of just releasing some of this trauma. I mean, the universe put me there for a reason. And it was within 2 weeks of seeing my parents for the last time um, in that instance. So it was presented in front of me, but I would never take the time to do it before because I didn't want to deal with it. And then all of a sudden, I was in the middle of it.
Okay, so you didn't consciously choose to sit down, like I didn't consciously choose to heal my traumas. The universe basically took a 2 by 4 to me and said, okay, you're not listening to my whispers. You're not listening to the things that are happening. You're not listening to your body. You're not listening to what's happening in your world. So boom, I'm taking you down and now you're going to listen.
Pretty
Was it-
much was. Yep. And I'm very stubborn and I think I'm going to do everything my way on my terms. And well, that doesn't always work that way. And it was getting louder and louder and louder. And my body was really resisting against it, right? I hadn't had autoimmunity for a long time. And now all of a sudden, all these symptoms were coming back again, right? It was just signs that my body was telling me, hey, there's work you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so many times we don't understand that that is our body's communication system. And so when we don't understand that this is information, this is saying you're going down the wrong path, that there's something that needs to be addressed. There's a virus like we would in a computer. There's a virus here, pay attention, clean house, right? Instead, if we're in that victim mentality, we can end up hiding and shielding ourselves from it because we don't feel strong enough to face the pain.
Mhm.
So we're
Absolutely.
forced.
We're forced. And I think we're forced on purpose, right? Because we are resistant to doing it, right? If change and addressing these things were easy, you and I would have done it a long time ago. But it just, the pressure needed to mount to a certain level to be able to identify it. But I will tell you with 100% certainty, if I had not spent the year and a half before my son died unexpectedly, if I had not spent that time unpacking and resolving and getting a lot of that old stored emotional energy out of my body, I don't know how I would be talking to you right now. if I had not done that. It gave me capacity to be able to handle the next horrible thing that is going to happen, and all of the tools to be able to cope with it.
That's a tragedy that a lot of women have experienced. And there's a lot of women who are saying, how can you say that, as if it was what you went through was a gift or gratitude? Because unthinkable what you experienced. Can you help people understand the the gift of the love, the gift of the empowerment, the gift of what you've gotten from this tragedy?
So, um, so much. I will tell you, um, a couple of years before my grandma died, I ended up there taking care of her because she was given 2 weeks to 2 months to live, but no one told her that, so she continued to live. That was the first interaction of her helping me bring back faith in God, because I grew up in a church and I went to church every Sunday, but I didn't understand how everyone could go to church on Sundays, take communion, be forgiven of their sins, do bad things, and do it again the next week. And so I had disconnected myself from God because I didn't understand how in the world he could allow the bad things to happen. And so she was my connection to bring faith back in for me so that I wasn't alone when my my son died. And it I don't even know how to say this, but when when everything happened in the way that it happened, I found myself thankful for things that I felt awful to be thankful for, but I needed to be thankful. I needed to show thanks for the things that I did have. So I needed to be thankful for the 30 years that I had with him. I was thankful for that he did not kill himself. I was thankful that was not, on drugs or something like that that we didn't know of, that it was a medical condition. I was thankful for those things. I'm like, how in the world are you thankful for things like that? Right? They sound awful to be thankful for, but I was, and it was and is, and I don't know how it won't be the hardest thing that I ever am going through. And we had friends that had also gone through this before. And friends would show up and tell me, it's going to hurt every day. Every single day, it's going to hurt. And you're going to think about it every day, but the pain gets less. And so people would show up in my life to give me some expectations on what to expect. Right. So I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be heavy. Um, I have a granddaughter that's 9. She's going to be 10 on Valentine's Day. And I had a commitment to her to make sure that she and I got out of bed every day. We did some of the things in our day that we're going to do every day because we had to figure out how in the world we were going to live our lives without her dad. And I had to explain to her that I didn't know how we were going to do this because I had never done it, but we were going to figure out a way. And so to be able to guide her through this, I needed to show up, right? And I knew that my son would never want me getting in bed and not getting out. And I knew that if I did that, I would not be honoring him. So every day I was going to get out of bed, no matter how hard it was. And every day I decided, you know what? You're going to talk with God every day. You are going to say the things that you're thankful for every day. You're going to focus on your grandchildren, your husband, your son, like, because there were still so many people in my life that deserved to have me there. Right. And we needed to get through it together. So, and I will write about this because I feel like grief never goes away. It doesn't. And, you know, there was a couple of months where I cried every single day. And I cried so that I could show up and do the thing that I needed to do the rest of the day. So it was something that had to make a decision that it wasn't my choice that it happened. For some reason, there's a purpose and a greater purpose that I don't know what that is yet. But I had to make a choice that I was going to get out of bed every day, that I was going to grieve every day, that I was going to be thankful every day, and then I was going to show up as myself every day until I could figure out what the purpose of it is.
That that is absolutely beautiful. And with all respect, I want to share my perspective on the universal laws and where we are in this world right now. I believe that we're in a massive paradigm shift, that we are in transition between power and control and the patriarchy and the haves and the have-nots. And we also live in a universal world where everything has a polar opposite and everything has a vibrational energy. And the depth of love that you had for your son and the depth of love that you have for your family is being honed to counteract all the darkness that we're experiencing. And it's making your heart explode and give it even bigger so that your love is expanding out into the world because your heart is being called forward for all the darkness that we're experiencing.
You know, I firmly believe that. And I do think it's important that I mention that I work on this. Like every day, I work on this energy. I've had to work on opening my heart. I have had to like consciously and subconsciously work on this and bringing myself back. You know, when I was talking earlier about taking my son's ashes to Guatemala for the energy of the volcano, like it was a pre-planned thing, but I had to take him there with me and I had to put a small portion of him there for that energy. I had to go there because I needed to be able to energetically open up so that I could start grieving. Because what I did was when I went into nurse mode and I put all the walls up and I took care
Suppress,
of
suppress.
and I took care of everything and everyone, right? And that's what I needed to do at that point. But 1 month later, the toll that it had taken on my body, like I lost a lot of weight. I wasn't eating, and consciously I knew, right? I knew you must eat, you must do this, you at least have to hydrate, you have to do that. But I could tell, even though I had all the walls up, that I could I mean, looking in the mirror, I could see what was happening. And I had to go to Guatemala to do some specific breath work and use some neurolingual programming techniques that I know from training to be able to energetically and unconsciously take myself back to the hospital again and grieve in the ER and in ICU. Like I had to release those emotions so that I could open up and be able to grieve. And I have had to continue to do stuff like that to be able to get those emotions out because when you're saying unlearning the crap, I'm not putting crap back in to undo all the stuff that I've done. I have to use the
Oh,
tools that I've been shown.
I love that. I love that because you're so right. When we're programmed to suppress, when we're programmed to put on the masks and build the walls and do all these things that soldier up. Um, and this is a remind me of something that you'd said earlier that I want to bring up, but that becomes learned behavior.
Mhm.
And we need to break the cycle of it. It's not just healing what happened in the past. We need to break the cycle of that disempowerment, and showing up vulnerable and showing up and saying, this is not easy. This is hard. This hurt. This sucks. But the polar opposite is you can't feel that kind of depth of pain without that depth of love.
That is so true. That is absolutely true. And I've tried to um embrace some of the aspects of this, right? Of yes, I loved him. I mean, right before he died, I was seriously on another podcast talking about how the first time I held him in my arms and how much I loved him and how I lost even more respect for my mother because I knew I'd never let anything hurt him. And it was just, you know, of going from that to this devastation to why is this pain happening to how do we bring love in? Like, how do we energetically create? Because you're right, we're in chaos right now. And if I bring chaos into the world, that's not helping anybody. So we have to consciously choose, like, right, you can choose to be miserable or you can choose to not be miserable, right? You can choose a different path, right? It is a choice, and every day is a choice. And I know a lot of people think, well, they don't want to go through the hard stuff. You have to. If you don't go through the hard stuff, if you don't deal with the hard stuff, if you'll never get to where you want to be if you don't.
Yeah. And that's part of the crap conditioning that we were taught, is to avoid the hard stuff, that the hard stuff's not supposed to happen. Says who? Is it supposed to happen to somebody else? You know? What, we we live in a world where bad things happen, and we have loss and we have struggles and we have challenges and we have crap.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's called living, right? And if we expect life to go and always go our way, we're going to be very upset and unhappy most of our lives because that's not how it is. It really isn't, right? And we have to embrace, hey, bad things are going to happen, but we're not going to sit and ruminate over the bad things, right? Because there's so much good. And if we put that energy into all of the good that's surrounding us, we're going to be in a much different vibration to be able to connect with more people and be able to have conversations of hope and where we're going versus, oh my God, we're doomed. Because if all we're having is conversations of doom, nobody's ever going to feel good.
Yeah, as you were talking, the visual popped into my head because one of the universal laws is the law of rhythm and the law of gestation. And the gestation period, we don't know how long it is for anything, just like we don't know how long we have on this earth. We don't know what's coming next. We don't know why some people live to over 100 and some have young lives like your son. We don't know these things, and when we try to make sense of it, we are trying to engage our prefrontal cortex, which is our logical part of our brain, but this is an emotion. This can only be felt. It can't be thought. And that's part of what I believe we haven't been taught is how to feel, how to process these emotions. And the visual that as you were talking, that made me go into the law of rhythm, which whenever I say the law of rhythm, I do this infinity movement. But I'm thinking about the seasons and the trees, right? The trees go into dormancy, it loses all its leaves. Well, what if during that period of time, the tree got stuck in the loss of all those leaves? It wouldn't be able to go through the next season.
So true. And it really is true with it. And It's so interesting as there are seasons, right? Just like there's people that are only in our lives for a particular part of our lives. That's just how it's going to be, right? But we're moving and growing and embracing what we learned from those people, good or bad.
Yeah. I went through my period of time where I was in transition, my part of my healing journey, and a book jumped out of the shelf at me. Not literally, but every
Mhm.
time I tried to walk past it, I kept being drawn back, and I'm like, "What?" And it was the religion section, and I'm not a religious person, and I have had issues with the church like you, and I'm like, "What am I doing?" But I kept being drawn back, and there was a book, and it forever changed my outlook, and it was, by Neil Donald Walsh, and it was called Conversations with God. And in this book, there was a soul that wanted to come to Earth, and it wanted to experience something. And so, in order for us to experience anything, we need the relativity to be able to experience it. We can't know warm without cold. We can't know love without hate or anger. We can't know delicious without bitter. Like, we have to have these opposites in order to create perspective and relativity. And so a little angel came and said, "Well, I will be the bad person in your story. I will play this role for you because I love you so much. So if this is what you want to experience, I will take this on and I'll give this to you." And so when I hear stories of young losses of children and babies and young men like your son, I think that their hearts must have been so big to bring something so selflessly for others.
I agree. I agree. And, you know, each one of us has a purpose on earth, whether or not we know it and or not. Um, we're all here for a purpose. And some of us are here longer than, than others. And, I'll tell you, it's been interesting to watch, right? Because long story short, God gave me boys because I was not going to be a good role model. I was not ready to be a good role model body wise, especially for girls. And now I have four granddaughters. So times have changed. It's interesting having conversations with them, especially after the death of my son. And so the conversations are very intriguing for them. Right? My 6 year old granddaughter, the other day, I had my 9 year old, my 6 year old granddaughter with me, and we were driving to Costco, and the 6 year old said, "Hey, what do you think I'd be doing if I was in heaven with Uncle Connor?" And I said, "I don't know." And I said, well, let me tell you about a few things that I've heard about heaven. And my oldest granddaughter goes, "Oh, from that book you're reading about near death experiences. Is it from that book?" And I said, "Yeah, it's from that book." So we started talking about energy and just love and just feeling of connection and being exactly where you're supposed to be. And as I'm driving, I'm thinking, I'm having this conversation with a 6 and a 9 year old. Can you imagine if adults would actually have these conversations? Right? And so, and this most awful thing that's happened to our family, and it's hard, it is. And now, because I spend every day processing somewhat of it, then I can talk about it. Um, it's also created this very openness, right, for us to explore other things and explore love and talk about this. So whatever is happening for these children in this, there's a greater purpose for them in their lives too, and how they're going to navigate it. So, and so
Absolutely.
the world. If we all had answers, that would be no fun either.
No, there'd be no purpose to it. The how is not ours to just, we're here as creators.
Yeah.
So on that conversation, let's shift to, that was the crap, that was the journey, that was the hardship. You said we all have a purpose, and I could not agree more. I believe that each one of us is part of the fabric that makes us stronger. And when we step into our purpose, we add to the strength of the weave in the collective. And so, how do you use the crap you've unlearned to level up? What is your purpose? What is your mission? How are you serving the world right now?
So my mission, uh, it deepens as the days go on. And so what I didn't realize is I was really put on this earth to give women a safe space to heal, a safe space to come and be heard and talk about the stuff that's really bothering them. That's where they can be vulnerable and get that stuff out. And because I'm that person that can give them that safe space, because I think that's what I wanted, was that safe space, but I
Mm.
never found it.
Oh, oh, there's the polar opposite of what you needed as a child and as a woman. You became.
I did. And it didn't happen intentionally. It happened because that's who I am. And it deepened, right? At first, it started with nursing, and then it went into holistic nutrition, and then it went into gut and the immune system, and then it went into the mind and the body connection. And now it's all come together and encompassing as giving a person a safe space where they can feel heard and have a plan and have hope that they're going to feel better, right? Because if someone has that connection and they have hope that they're going to feel better, even if they don't know how, there is a plan that can be developed with it. And that's my purpose, is to be here for people when they're ready.
Wow. So, do you help them with their health and wellness?
So I help them with the physiology of their body, so making sure they're restoring function, so digestion, absorption, hormone balance, sleep, hydration, but also with what they're telling themselves, right? Because you can have all of those healthy aspects in place, but if your mind is still telling your body you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not worthy, your cells know, right? Women tell themselves things that they would never tell another person, right? They sling these nasty things and create these ideas in their head that are just not true, but then we believe them for so long, they become truths. And so I can really help women unravel and see that what they've been telling themselves for so long was never really true to begin with. And then reprogram the brain into what's actually true. It makes a huge difference. Once you realize you've been lying to yourself since you were a child, you're like, oh, wow,
Yeah,
I can't believe that I've been telling myself that for so long. And it's a process, but it's a process that's life changing to go through.
absolutely. And recently, I've been told that it is our gut biome that creates our hormones, that creates all of the signals that go to our brain that create all of these neural pathways, these beliefs. It is our gut that speaks to our heart, that sends our energy out into the world. And it is our gut that, when it is not taken care of, that creates disease.
Mhm. That is 100% true. And you have to think, if the brain is sending signals of stress, right? How many people live in a state of stress? When you're in a
I did.
state of stress, your gut will never work, right? You have to get the energy of your body balanced to be able to work with the physiology of your body. And the body just wants to come back to homeostasis, but sometimes we fight it so much of, I don't need to sleep. I don't need that much. I don't need to do that. I'm not going to hydrate. Like, we fight our body's natural ability to do what it needs to do. right? So sometimes we just have to stop fighting and just embrace what needs to happen
And accept.
and accept. Yes.
I think acceptance is a superpower. It takes us away from the shoulds.
Yes. Should I mean, if you say I should or I have to all the time, that's just a negative. Your body's getting a negative energy right there. And then it isn't should, it's I want to feel good. And this is how I'm going to do it. Right. And that's how I started reversing my autoimmunity to begin with. I got rid of the sugar. I got rid of all the crap that I was putting into my body at the time. And I will tell
Yeah.
you that I was told that I was nuts at the time, that it wasn't going to work. And it did. And it took a while, right? And it was an evolution. And I had to do a lot of other things on top of it. But you know what? I'm 50 and I feel pretty darn good at this point. And it's because I chose to. So you get to choose how you want to feel. And if you choose how you want to feel, then we can develop a plan on how to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I had suffered with fibromyalgia for almost 40 years. Nobody knew what it was. The doctors were looking for tumors or diseases or anything like that, but nobody at that time knew about stress or cortisol or trauma or anything else to do with fibromyalgia and how it's connected to the gut microbiome. And so I became a pharmaceutical experiment.
Huh?
And it was always, well, try this pill and reduce that one. And I always felt like I was in a chemistry experiment with the doctors. And it took me down to the depths of the worst despair ever. And I had to come off of all that pharmaceutical and go to the root cause, which was to heal my traumas. Because that just reminded me of the thing that you had said when you were told by your family member to hide the truth. You were being forced to carry somebody else's emotions and somebody else's consequences.
And I did not realize that until October of last year, that that one moment locked me into something, locked me into those emotions. And it wasn't malicious. She just didn't want her parents to be hurt. And I understood and we agreed that that's what I would do. I just didn't realize how much I had pushed down
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Those carrying somebody else's burdens, carrying
Mhm.
somebody else's responsibility, taking the world on, yes, I will take it, I will hold it, I will absorb it. That's
Mhm.
where we get sick.
Yes. And some people have a capacity to hold more of those things than others. But you know what? We weren't meant to. We were meant to feel the emotion, good or bad. Feel it, embrace it, hate it, let it go, and then move
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
And that's where I feel that I'm at now, is being able to do that. And it doesn't feel good every day. But you know what? It's okay. Because if I can feel good 90% of the day, because I spent 10% of the day working through all the emotions and not carrying them, that's a win.
yeah. That's what you had to do to feel good, is you had to release that, you had to process it, you had to
Mhm.
clean the house.
You have to clean the house because there's going to be something else tomorrow, right? Something's going to pop
Yeah,
up. I mean, there's no such thing as a stress-free life. It's our response to the stress, right? And we can navigate the response to the stressor.
absolutely. Heather, I could talk to you forever. You are such a beautiful soul. Your clients are so blessed and lucky to have someone who has the capacity to see because unfortunately you've experienced it and that allows you to help. For those people who are listening to us right now or watching and they're struggling, how do they reach out to you?
So the best way is to get on my website, which is flourishnutritionaltherapy.com. And on there, there's a contact button. Let's have a conversation. I always like to have a conversation just to see how it can help somebody and make sure that they're the right fit, because this process is scary. It is going to feel uncomfortable, and you can't embrace the discomfort to go through it. Right. And so just know that if you're feeling uneasy about it, you're not sure if you want to do it, let's have the conversation to discuss it, and then going through the pain to get to where you want to be. Because the only way out of this is through it to the other side.
Yeah. We're birthing a new you.
So true. So true.
Yeah. Heather, thank you so much for your time, but most importantly, thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing, because I know that your story will touch people and help them heal. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me. So nice to talk.
Absolutely.